Nayadagatam antakam. Mataji's. Synonyms, word for word. Bhunjana, while eating. Prabhiban, while drinking. Khadan, while chewing. Balakam, unto the child. Sneha, yantrita, being attached by affection. Bhojayan, feeding. Payayan, giving something to drink. Mudaha, the foolish man. Na, not. Veda, understood. Agatam, had arrived. Antakam, death. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. When Ajamil chewed food and ate it, he called the child to chew and eat. And when he drank, he called the child to drink also. Always engaged in taking care of the child and caring and calling his name Narayan, Ajamil could not understand that his own time was now exhausted and that death was upon him. So let's try to read this translation together. Okay. Translation. When Ajamil chewed food and ate it, he called the child to chew and eat. And when he drank, he called the child to drink also. Always engaged in taking care of the child and calling his name Narayan. Ajamil could not understand that his own time was now exhausted and that death was upon him. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is kind to the conditioned soul. Although this man completely forgot Narayan, he was calling his child, saying, Narayan, please come and eat this food. Narayan, please come and drink this milk. Somehow or the other, therefore, he was attached to the name Narayan. This is called Agyata Sukriti. Although calling for his son, he was unknowingly chanting the name of Narayan. And the holy name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is so transcendently powerful that his chanting was being counted and recorded. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavanamuscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sarvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakanamuscha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachayane Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pastyachada Satarane Vancha Kalpaturubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So before we start, I'd like to ask the blessings of all the senior devotees so that we may kindly speak something in glorification of the Srimad Bhagavatam. This pastime that we're hearing about, this Ajamil pastime, is one of the most important pastimes in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Why? Because it shows the power of the holy name to save or help even somebody who is a reprobate. A reprobate is somebody who doesn't want to reform. He's fallen so low that he cannot be helped. He cannot be helped. Srimad Bhagavatam talks about different subjects, different topics. Of course, the principal essence of Bhagavatam is bhakti, but in order to get to that, different aspects of life are used. So Srimad Bhagavatam talks about different aspects, and they all are centered on this concept of bhakti, devotion. And in this canto, many of the characters succeed in achieving bhakti by taking shelter of the holy name of the Lord. This is one example here in the human form. We see in the Asura form, coming a little further on, the pastime of Vitrasu, and then in the Devata form, that of Indra. Actually, it seems to be that Indra is the one who benefits the most in this canto, because he's always making mistakes and offending people, killing Brahmins, things like that we'll get to hear in this canto. So if we look at the context of the 6th canto, this pastime is told with the idea of freeing someone from sin, because we just finished the 5th canto, right? And it was speaking about the hellish planets. So freeing someone from sin after the description of the hellish planets. So the idea is somebody is very sinful. If he takes to the chanting, he will be purified. So this Leela, this pastime is so significant that BBT has even produced a book on these 3 chapters called Second Chance. The Second Chance. So in the mainstream preaching, when we use this concept, there is a wonderful, it's a wonderful tool for explaining the idea of near-death experiences, NDE. It's a common metaphysical feature that is prominent in the Western world now, because scientists are getting to see and understand that there is something beyond the body. There is something that animates the body, and there is evidence that during different phases of the operation that a doctor does, that the person is able to recall different instances of the operation when the body is completely dead. So where is the person existing in order to understand these things? So there are ideas of this, and pastimes like this give very tangible evidence in this field. So we see Parikshit Maharaj. Where is he? If we in the 6th canto, how many days have passed in his hearing? About 3.5 days. He's hearing now for 3.5 days without food and water. And he's just heard this part of the hellish planets. So he's hearing very attentively, and a question comes to mind. What is the duty of one about to die? He's asked this question very earlier on. That's why the Bhagavatam is such a scientific scripture. Because it's not based, although the pastimes are based on Krishna and the events of devotees being connected to Krishna, but see what the questions have been asked by the sages very earlier on. They're not sectarian. They're beyond sectarian. So they're practical for everyday life. And if somebody is a little thoughtful, these questions become very relevant to his life. So Parikshit Maharaj then asked, how is one to be freed from sinful reactions? Now it's interesting enough, Sukadeva Goswami chooses this particular story to explain that point. How one gets freed from sinful reactions. But the story itself starts with a virtuous person. Ajamil is not born sinful. He's become sinful. So he's not born sinful. He's born actually very virtuously, very Brahmanically. So it's interesting how the story starts like that. And why? Why does it start? Why did Sukadeva Goswami choose this story to explain this point? Well, because in this world, virtue alone cannot give one protection. In this world, virtue alone cannot give one protection. That's why the title of this canto is called, anybody? Poshana. Poshana, protection. Both physical protection and spiritual protection. So virtue alone cannot do it, as Ajamil would have thought. Just one image, one moment where Maya had allured him and he was over, he was finished. So Prabhupada starts this, stressing this point right in the first sentence of the purport. He says here, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is kind to the conditioned soul. What is that kindness? How is he kind? What is that kindness? We'll try to explore that today. Although Srila Prabhupada describes Ajamil as a devotee, he actually was not technically a devotee. He was actually a good Brahmin, a Brahmanical person. Thus, he did not have the proper tools to understand what will happen when one is being tempted by Maya, because a ritualistic Brahmin is nothing but that. He's engaged in ritualistic activity. He knows the activities, he knows the mantras, but internally, is he connected to Krishna in devotion? That may be another question. So we see that that in one aspect of the Brahmanical life is devotion, but it's not the central point. If you analyze the qualities of a Brahman, in 1842 it's given. Sama dama tapasso cham shanti majavam evacha jnanam vijnanam astakyam brahma karma swabhavacha. None of these 8 principles actually say anything about bhakti directly. So you can be virtuous, doesn't necessarily mean you have devotion. And this is why Sukadeva Goswami chose this pastime, to bring out this point, that if one is virtuous, is not necessarily protected by bhakti. But if he takes shelter of the Supreme Lord, automatically he's protected. So he's not mentioned bhakti as one of the main qualities. Without bhakti, one cannot transcend. To actually experience spirituality, to have that spiritual experience, one has to have a higher experience of life than mundane material experiences. Vishaya vinivartante nirharascha dehinam rasovarja rasopyasya param dristam nivartate. To have that param dristam, the higher level of taste, one has to practice devotion. That's why it's so essential, this pastime, to teaching us this point. So, because there are many other Brahmans given. Actually, even in the 10th canto, in the 10th chapter of Gita, Krishna explains Sukaracharya as one of the best in the Brahmanical class, one of the best Brahmins. Krishna uses him as the example. So it's not necessarily spiritual or devotional. Prabhupada explains here. When Ajamil chewed his food and ate it, he called the child to chew and eat. And when he drank, he called the child to drink also. Always engaged in taking care of the child and calling his name Narayan. So we see that just now, before, while we were singing the kirtan, Saranga Thakur saw that little boy was here and he was calling him also, yeah? So this is the nature of little children. They become very attractive, very alluring. I'm sure you've seen, maybe it's the same child, I'm not sure. That little boy that walks around with the bead bag at the back, you've seen him? One of our, I think he's one of our Pujari's devotees, the children. So it's very cute, it's very attractive, and we feel we'd like to, pet him on the head or just tease him a little bit. So that natural sentiment to take care of, to express some affection to. This is the same idea here Ajamil is expressing. So he's calling the child. Very soon coming up is Balaram Purnima. So in Jiva Goswami explains this beautiful pastime in Gopal Champu. When Krishna and Balaram were little children, then there was a little problem. Because the mothers in the household, Mother Rohini and Mother Yashoda, Krishna and Balaram were born at the similar time, 1 week difference. Technically 1 year difference, but practically 1 week difference, right? So Balaram is older by 1 week. And when the mothers used to call, "Oh Krishna, come here," then what would happen? Both the children would turn around. Both of them would turn around at the same time. Oh, and now this was becoming a problem. Because if you call Krishna, both of them turn. If you call Balaram, both of them turn. Because they didn't learn whose name belonged to who. So the mothers realized, and mothers know how to handle these situations. So the mother said, "Okay, Yashoda, we have to do something here. We have to separate these boys. And then we have to call them by name. And then when we call them, then when they see that we're giving attention to that child, then they learn to understand, oh, Krishna is me and Balaram is him." So this beautiful pastime comes up there in the Gopal Champu. So we hear also that Ajamil, he's 88 years old. He's not a young man. Our Dadu there, I'm always teasing our Dadu. Our Dadu does kirtan. So he's about 84, 85, but he has the heart of a young boy. And he's always in this mood also. So 88 years old, what would it be like? So you know in Hindi, when you call grandfather, Jai Shri Shri Radhe Shyam Krishna Balaram Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. So when you call grandfather, what is the name of grandfather? Anybody? Aja. So short form of Ajamil, Aja. Aja. So we know he's 88, but you know, he's already has 10 children and he has this young boy. So it's the tendency to want to give protection and want to take care of the child, like we're hearing today. Whatever he's eating, he's also feeding the boy. Whatever he's drinking, milk and different things, he's also feeding the boy. So it's interesting because we don't know really. I've tried to read through the commentaries of the acharyas and I couldn't really find which yuga. If somebody knows, please share with us which yuga this pastime took place, because being 88 years old and having 10 children sounds something like Kali Yuga. So, but we're not sure really. So I have a little sample here of a modern example of Ajamil, and just to give you an idea of how easy it is to get attached to a little child. So we can learn that we're not against being attached to children, but we're against being or learning the art of understanding what attachment can cause, the harm it can cause in long term. So I just want to play this for you. Okay. Okay, we're in here. Oops. Technical stuff, huh? Okay, got it. Yeah.
That's me!
Okay. So here we have a man who's come home from work, and he's just learned from his wife that the child has spoken the first name, Dada. So you can imagine how happy he must have been, right? Excited and happy. So let's hear his joy in this. So I'm just going to play it without, because... So hear his excitement.
Brooklyn, you say Dada?
That's me! That's me! I'm Dada! I'm Daddy! You said it! Can you say it again? Say Dada. That's so awesome! That is so... Say Dada. Say Dada. Yes! That is so awesome!
So you can hear how happy he is, right? To hear his son chant his name. So let's hear what Prabhupada has to explain about spiritual life.
What is this? Detached.
So why is this difficult, or what is the lesson?
We have to understand the falsity of this so-called society, friends.
So we have to understand the falsity of it.
It is just like, because we are being carried away by the waves of Maya. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has sung, Maya Ravasi Jatcho Bhese Khatcho Habu Dubu Bhai. Just like we see sometimes in rainy season, so many plants and creepers and vegetables and so many other things are floating in the river. Well, similarly, we also are all floating in the waves of Maya. Maya Vasi Jatcho Vesi. Sometimes drown, sometimes on the surface, sometimes on the other shore, sometimes in this shore. This is going on.
So Prabhupada is explaining that we are all floating on the ocean of Maya. So it's not an easy thing. It's not that we are against children or understanding of sharing love, but understand how difficult it is to break that detachment. So Ajamil, he could not understand his own time. So Prabhupada, at the second part of the purport, he explains this. Ajamil could not understand that his own time was now exhausted, and that death was upon him. So what is this understanding of time? What is the understanding of time? So time is actually Krishna, the source of activation in this material world. According to Sankhya, time is the activating principle that animates the material world. So it activates the Mahatattva. The Mahatattva is the material ingredient, and in itself it doesn't have any life, so to speak, until time is added to it, and then it can react. So it is the moving agent or the activation principle. And we see this Queen Kunti has also understood and appreciated this point of Krishna. She describes in her prayers 1:8:28, Manye tvam kale ishanam, that I declare that you are actually time. So Krishna is the activating principle, the controller. So Krishna is time. So what does it mean, Krishna is time? How do we understand this? In the modern idea of time, time is not just some factor that is used in mathematical equations or in physics to describe the fourth dimension. These are different aspects of time. But time is actually predates space. According to Vedic understanding, time predates space. Means it exists before space was created. And space comes from ether. And ether is one of the material elements. So the Vedic understanding of space is that which manifests due to ether. So the modern idea of reality is that time and space are together. But the Vedic idea is different. Is that space is actually created from ether and time existed before that. So time existed before that. So time predates space. So time exists eternally and space occurs periodically. In Sankhya, time is the works through the three modes. But Krishna is beyond creation. So he's existing as a shelter which is beyond creation. Therefore he can, by that logic, he's not temporary. Because he's existing beyond that which is temporary. So if you take shelter of him, then you can transcend this material creation. So by focusing on Krishna, it can give us a dependency beyond the material duality of this world. So why? Because we are not dependent on anything material in our pleasure or in our security. In the material world, time has the characteristic of controlling and destroying. Two things. Ajamil is experiencing that right now. He's getting old. He's getting old, right? So it's controlling and destroying. And Srila Prabhupada, in the spiritual world, this destructive feature of time is not there. But the other feature, it still exists in the material world. So in Sankhya, it is called, technically, eternal cyclicity. That means it eternally goes on. It eternally is there in the spiritual world, but it's not acting the way it does in the material world. Now how do we understand this? Because we know that Krishna was able to do Ras Leela for one whole night of Brahma. We know that time exists there. There's elderly people in the spiritual world, elderly gopis, right? So there must be an aspect of time there, but that time is not the way it works in the material world. The principle is different. So in this way, if there was no time there, then there is no smaranam. If there was no concept of time in the spiritual world, the cowherd boys, when they sleep at night, they dream of Krishna. How would you dream? How would you recall? How would the gopis remember the activities of Krishna? So the aspect of smaranam needs the interception of time. Therefore time is relevant both in the material and the spiritual worlds. But in the material world, it acts as a destructive agent. So an Ajamil is experiencing this. So Krishna is time in the material world for the purpose of gradually reforming the living beings. So his principle acting in the material world as time is to reform, redeem, reform. And we see Ajamil experiencing this. He's going through this moment right now. So is time an illusion then? If it's in the material world, is it an illusion? So it's not an illusion, but it is illusionary. It's not illusion because it's Krishna. But it creates the concept of being illusionary. It gives us an idea of having existence and acting in this world. It's illusionary. Okay, it's over. If it was illusion, then how do we get reactions? If time was illusionary, then how do we get reactions? That means reactions will be illusionary also. But we experience it, right? We do get reactions. When you do karma, you get reaction. So it's not actually illusion, but it's illusionary. It gives an idea of something that's existing. It gives an idea of past deeds or future. In one aspect, time destroys and controls, but for a devotee, it's the same aspect acting that brings one closer to Krishna. So time also acts. So in this particular pastime, in the Ajamil story, both aspects of time are being expressed. One, where it has got him to be old, it has destroyed his life and forced him to surrender like this to become old, and at the same, the spiritual principle of bringing him to Krishna. Both aspects of time were present in this pastime. So in the purport, Prabhupada says some nice points here. It's a short purport, but it's very powerful. Prabhupada says here, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is kind to the conditioned souls. Here's the aspect of time redeeming. He's kind to the conditioned souls. Although this man completely forgot Narayan, he was calling his child, saying, Narayan, please come and eat this food. Narayan, please come and drink this milk. So somehow or the other, you see this phrase a lot in Prabhupada's writing, somehow or the other. It's expressing that you may not understand it, but Krishna is actually there. He's giving that guiding spiritual guidance, that helping principle, the mercy protection feature. So somehow or the other, he was attached to the name Narayan, and this is called Agyata Sukriti. Although calling for his son, he was unknowingly chanting the name of Narayan, and the holy name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is so transcendently powerful, that his chanting was being counted and recorded. So we know the nature of the material world to give us suffering. Yehi samsparshana bhoga dukkayonaya evate adyantavanta konteya natesu ramate buddha. Dukkayonaya evate. By touch of the senses with the material objects, dukkha is born. Therefore, we've been hearing from the different speakers, it's the bitter pill of medicine. We always like the nice medicine that's, like Ayurvedic medicine comes in sweets and things like that, right? But allopathic medicine is usually very bitter and it just gets to the point there, right? So we usually like that feature of Krishna consciousness that is very nice. But this aspect, like Prabhupada is saying, Maya is very strong. And if we don't learn the idea of detachment, then we will experience exactly what Ajamil is going through. So it's like, the example is given like bait on a fish hook. So is bait, you know what's bait on a fish hook? It's a little morsel of food that's on a fish hook. Now is it food or not? Can it give pleasure or not? Yes, it has the potency to give pleasure, but we're not seeing the hook that it is placed on. That bait is food, yes, but we're not seeing what's behind that food. It is a form of the food, it's just a little morsel. Similarly, material enjoyment is compared to this. That's why in what we've been hearing from the different speakers, it's coming out very strongly. Understand the nature of material enjoyment. Dukkha yonaya evate. It is the womb of suffering. So just like that fish hook has a little morsel of food on it, the fish doesn't see the hook. He's just seeing, oh, somebody was so kind to place some food right in front of me like this. Same with the mouse trap. The mouse is saying, wow, what a kind person is here, huh? He goes out of his way to place some cheese in front of me like this. So knowledge, education means see the bigger picture. A philosopher is always thinking greater. He's always has foresight. He's thinking with depth. He's thinking with perspective. And he's using spiritual knowledge from Shastra to help him understand these points. So pleasure is entrapping, and we see that in what's happening in this pastime. It looks like, oh, somebody has put it there, but it's actually entrapping. So we can only transcend this if we have a proper spiritual knowledge. So whatever, there's a nice saying. I'd like to read this saying to you. Whatever catches our attention catches us. Whatever catches our attention catches us. If Krishna catches our attention, we will be caught by him. So what to do then? So we have to be conscious of our consciousness. We have to be conscious of how we're perceiving things. And the guidance of being able to do that is going to come from scripture. Although Ajamil lived a virtuous life, that one image that he saw of the prostitute just grabbed him. And that was it. His whole life took a different direction after that. One moment, just one moment. So in this society, this kind of behavior was immoral. In the society that Ajamil was living in, this kind of behavior was actually not acceptable. Why? Because he was a Brahmin, firstly. And a Brahmin is an esteemed person of society, is a very highly respected person of the society. So for that person to live this kind of lifestyle, it's completely bewildering how this could have happened. So when Maya attacks us, we forget all dharma. So even although he's a Brahmin, he forgot all dharma. Sarva dharman parityaja Maya mekam saranam braja. We just surrender to Maya, forget all dharma. Smaranam, kirtanam, and some other kind of smaranam will go on. Right? So we have to be careful, be conscious of what we are thinking. So Shastra helps us to see that. So are we more sense controlled than Ajamil because we see more vivid type of imagery in our modern, postmodern lifestyle, right? So does that mean we're more sense controlled? No. It means that we are more desensitized. We've become so desensitized that this is normal. Do you see how people come dressed to a temple? Is that the Indian culture? Is that the culture of Bharata, of India, to come to the temple? How many people see with dhoti? Have a look. You can have a look. How many people can you count wearing a dhoti that come for darshan? So what has happened to the Brahmanical culture? If the culture is not there, how is spiritual life to be practiced? It's like that rope really divides the two here. So it's important to think about this, because these images, we've become so desensitized that we don't realize how these images have become lodged in the mind. Just one look and it becomes lodged as a samskar. You can't take it out. It's there. That's why the most powerful form of preaching that is used even today is advertising. And we even use these projectors and different kind of, like I did some multimedia here just now. So you could hear how the man was so elated to hear his child. And pictures says 1,000 words. You never forget a picture. I can ask you about a picture that maybe I've shown you 1 year ago and you'll still remember it. So what if it was some illicit picture? Can you imagine the samskar that is there? Now what's the problem with this? The problem is that every samskar is there, has to get purified, it has to be removed. So how to remove that samskar? We didn't even put it there actively in the first place. If you go around and if you look on the outside, you've seen people looking. We'll use the euphemistic term looking, right? You see them looking, but after a while, the looking becomes a stare. And after a while, it becomes so strong, the person's body is moving in one direction, and the head is moving in another direction. And you wonder, how is he moving? He's like moving and walking and looking, and it's just moving. So can you imagine the state of that person's consciousness? He's totally oblivious that he's completely overpowered by Maya in this way. No sense of consciousness, no sense of understanding who he is. That's why spiritual knowledge is so powerful, because it gives us a real identity. Yes, we need to live in this material world. Yes, we need to have families and have children, but realize how that point of detachment has to be there at some point. That's why 3 of the ashrams deal with a detached lifestyle, to help us spiritually, help us move forward. So one glance cannot be helped, that's fine. But then it becomes a stare. For a Brahmin to steal, plunder, and do most of these activities is a sign of loss of integrity, of morality and dignity. For somebody to be in that state of consciousness means he doesn't have any dignity. Dignity means my self-awareness, my self-status, of my understanding of myself. Integrity means the way society sees me. People don't care about the way society sees. So it's educational. We need to understand these concepts so that we don't get allured away like what happened to Ajamil. So how lust can blind one to that? How lust can blind one so much so that one can lose all sense of things. And Krishna describes the power of this. Kama esha krodha esha rajaguna samudvaha mahasana mahapapma. This is the greatest pap, the greatest, most powerful enemy we have. Mahasana mahapapma. So it's almost like there's no way to overpower this. But this is the beauty of this pastime. Because as helpless as Ajamil was, he did something in his lifetime that helped him, that saved him, that gave him a chance, a second chance. And that was, he chanted the name of Narayan. So, Srila Prabhupada mentions this one time, that I regret that my disciples or my followers are not sufficiently afraid of Maya. They are not sufficiently afraid. Now, we don't like to speak on these topics just to frighten people or to show how I have transcended better than you. We are all in the same boat, but we want to try to share education. Become aware of this. It's a very powerful energy. Like we heard a few days ago, it is love which is being transferred in this material world. So it's a very powerful energy. And there's nothing material, there's no ritual that any Brahmana can do to overpower this. It can only be achieved by the higher taste, by spiritual taste. So we have that opportunity by practicing Krishna consciousness. So you see someone has been dragged, like Prabhupada describes, Maya drags one. He quoted Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So Maya, have you seen somebody being dragged? Is it a nice sight? Isn't it so uncomfortable to see that person on the floor like that, being pulled? Maya is ruthless in her service because she makes sure that we are qualified. Prabhupada mentioned, we were sharing this in the last Bhagavad Gita class, that if you have one pinch of material desire, you cannot go back to Godhead. He says that. One pinch. How much is a pinch? Is this much a pinch? I'm sure I have tons more than that of material desires. So it's very strong education. It's very strong, and this is what the sadhu means. Sadhu means heavy. It means to cut our illusions of the material world. So as much as we don't like to hear this kind of heavy philosophy, but ultimately it's for the benefit. Just like if the fish knew that that hook was there behind the bait, would he have taken that bait? Nobody told him. And when he does, then it's too late. So we don't want to be in that story. We don't want to be in that situation. We want to be able to learn from the guidance that Krishna has to offer us. So we see in modern day lifestyle, due to this kind of advertising, people have become ruthless. People have become completely without any dignity. We heard of the issue in Delhi with the 3 young men and the young lady maybe about a year ago. So how could something like that happen? How could somebody fall to such a low level? Why speak of Delhi? What about here in Vrindavan? Just about a few months ago, right? Maybe 4 months ago, there was that sad story of one of our mothers from our temple who was attacked near Keshi Ghat with the same kind of idea. So right here in Vrindavan, the demoniac consciousness is prevalent. So don't think that we are here in the Dham, we are safe and we are able to transcend it. No, we need to take shelter. So like we described, the time factor has two energies. In the material aspect, it controls and destroys. But in the spiritual aspect, Krishna as time, he helps us come closer to him. So if we use this opportunity, use our opportunity in Vrindavan Dham to realize the greatness we have of devotional service, something Ajamil had done in his Agyata Sukriti unknowingly, something he has done in his activities that has given him the opportunity to chant the name of Narayan. Not even the name of Krishna, the name of Narayan. So, and he gained so much of benefit from that. So much so that as the story unfolds, he comes to realize that when he chanted this name, this is what has helped him. Because when he chanted Narayan's name, his son, he came to the understanding, what can my little boy do for me? That man who we played the video clip, we heard him saying, oh my son, you chanted my name, huh, Dada? But when that man dies, can this little son, can Dada help him? Can his little son save him? But Ajamil had that enough sukriti to understand, enough piety, enough punya to understand, wow, I wasted my life. I've just wasted my whole life here. And I've been so abominable in my activities. And it's due to me chanting, forgetting Narayan. I've forgotten Krishna. But Krishna never forsakes his devotee. Swalpam Ramasyas Trayate Mahato Bhayat. Krishna, even a little endeavor done, just a little bit. How much is a little? Can you extrapolate it? Can you measure how much? If Krishna is doing so much for us and he's an eternal aspect, he's an eternal feature, and how much is our little? So if we had to say, well, I'm doing enough, so how much is enough? Have I done enough? So we have such a great opportunity, devotees. We have such a great opportunity here, being in Vrindavan Dham, in this moment in time, being able to hear these wonderful pastimes. Actually, this is one of the most defining pastimes in the whole Bhagavatam, the story of Ajamil. So it's very practical, realistic in the postmodern lifestyle that we live today. With all the technology and within a few buttons, you can be completely gone into Maya. Just press a few buttons on your mobile and you're completely gone into Maya. So be conscious, be careful. That dividing line is very fine. It's a very thin line. And it's so easily we can fall onto the other side. So we're hearing the glories of a great devotee of Krishna, and we'll hear more glories. And by hearing, then we get to learn and realize, and taste comes for the highest spiritual nature. Ultimately, this is our eternal existence. Ontologically, we come from the spiritual world. By nature of existence, this is what we enjoy. Material things can't give us enjoyment. If it could, why are we not satisfied? Why? Because we've experienced something so high. When we come to the material world and try to repose the same idea, it doesn't work. The idea of enjoyment is so high in the spiritual world, the experience is so strong that the fleeting material enjoyment just titillates, it tickles, just gives us a slight relief. But spiritual life can give us that transcendental experience. So we have that opportunity by the grace of Srila Prabhupada, and we have devotional service. So let's do it to our full heart's content. And like Ajamil, even if it takes one more lifetime, he had to go to Haridwar. We're already in the highest place, in the highest spiritual place in the universe, Vrindavan Dham. He had to go to Haridwar to experience this higher level. We're already here. So let's not lose this opportunity. Let's pray that just like Ajamil got the mercy, let's pray that we can also receive. Appreciation is a deep aspect of devotional service. So let's pray like this and pray to Srila Prabhupada, the previous acharyas, that in this lifetime we can at least come close enough. And if it takes one more, okay, what's the loss? At least we're going back home. So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we'll stop there, a little over time. If you have any questions or comments, I'll be here for a few moments. We can share some of this. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanand.